Hey all, so this is kind of a final farming strategy video that I'm going to be making for this league because the league is sort of dying out for me. I have used the strategy to amass enough currency to kind of polish off this build, and I'm still currently running it, but it's kind of getting a little tedious for me. But let me explain first that this original strategy was kind of popularized, or at least like put together, by Asmodeus. And so I will put a link to that original video in the description. But he goes into pretty decent detail about how you're wanting to use this farm and like take how he does it and kind of learn to build your own method of approaching that strategy. I think this is pretty important with any farming strategy, but especially for this one, having a good build is pretty important. At least a build that can do this strategy and the things in it well, and I'll explain that a bit more. I'll also go over some pros and cons I think he didn't cover in the video, just so I'm not like being too redundant. But I will say that this has been a very profitable strategy for me. And I will also say that when the leagues start to get into this like month, a little over a month phase, um, the strategies that at the start of the league were popular and turned non-profitable actually kind of reemerge as being quite profitable with like really good margins. And I think this is because a lot of people who are doing those farms like kind of sit it out until now, or were like doing this, or like people who are late to catch on to the best strategy, re-roll, play their part in that economy, and then kind of die out as well. Then there's like a shortage of supply. This is all intuition, so take it with a grain of salt, but I do believe that's kind of why this strategy is still pretty functional versus something like Life Force, which is very profitable still just because of how much gambling there's right now and how much divination cards are worth. But at the same time, it's like there's a lot of people farming it, and it's kind of uh I would say kind of like a low investment thing. It's not actually as much currency per an hour. But this strategy is, I would say, moderate investment. You're gonna be using full sextants and scarabs, but it's not crazy expensive or anything like Juice Beyond or anything like that. You're just gonna be playing three mechanics, specifically Syndicate, Legion, and Breach. So let's get into it. This is the Atlas tree. We're padding around, getting all the main Breach nodes, Legion nodes, and Harbinger nodes. The Harbinger is kind of a tack on because I mean they drop enough fraction shards for it to be worth it. Like a little over 70 maps, got 15. It's a decent amount of profit and returns, and you're gonna get a lot of ancient orbs and annulments and exalts that it will pay back. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. It's actually worth it. I think it's actually very undervalued and has been the entire league. We're gonna be going Eater of Worlds for duplications, and we're going to be going chayula and looking for as many warhordes as possible from Legion. We're not going to be touching the generals because those are completely worthless in my opinion. For Syndicate, we're going to try to be focused spotting Ashling. If we can get her in research and T4 every mastermind, you're going to be making a minimum of 3 div. 2 if you have no trusted on TFT, which is another point in this. If you don't have TFT or if you don't use TFT, obviously the strategy is going to be a little less profitable. But I'm able to spawn mastermind relatively fast, and I don't always get Ashley in research because I'm still learning the mechanic myself, honestly. But I do get her like I would say every other mastermind, or I would at least get like Varici plus hillock or something like that, and I would still get around 2 divines. And so on top of that, you also get winged scarabs. It's really a profitable strategy, and it adds on kind of this master missions. So beyond those, we're going to be using Divination Scarab, Polished, Gilded Breach, Polished Harbinger, and Polished Legion. And I'd say this is the most cost-effective setup. You can also go Polished Breach if you really don't like doing that many breaches. I think it's pointless to not go Gilded, though, because you're missing out on a lot of the extra rewards from it. But your best bet would still be to bulk buy those, and they're going to be a little bit expensive, but I promise it does pay off. We have a Chayula Sextant, Mysterious Harbinger, just Breaches, and Legion. This Breach one is kind of flexible. You can go really anything. You can go pack size if you really want. Big thing with this one is just that I'm going Breach for the extra value because Gilded Breach Scarabs give double from class spans. So I'd say it's really worthwhile to be running that Sextant. But you don't have to. It's kind of flexible. If you don't have enough Master Missions, you can always go Jin Sextant instead. I will put a preface out there that it is quite a lot longer mapping time for each map compared to other strategies, and it does take a second. And also the breaches are not the best thing for some builds. So even though I'm playing Cast on Crit with a lot of AoE, it doesn't feel like I'm covering as much as I could be versus someone who's like playing TS. So if you're playing TS, I mean, this strat's going to be great. If you've got Headhunter, it's even better. But I'm attempting this with a Mageblade build that has almost no survivability against Chayula, so, it's been going great. And even then, in, like 70 or so maps, I'm getting 44 Chayula's breachstones, so it's not bad. But, anyways, one thing to note here is you need to be able to kill Intervention fast before they kill you, or before they run away. Otherwise, your Syndicate's going to be kind of bricked. You want to be able to also not die to any of them, really. Dying at all is going to obviously waste time, so that's something I was struggling with at first, but I kind of got the build a bit tankier, so now it's able to accomplish those. But I think overall, the strategy has been very effective in just generating currency, and you get a good mix of raw currency and stuff that you can just easily bulk sell. And ultimately, I think this is it's a very solid strategy, and it has been very fun because it feels a bit more juiced. So I will just run a map for demonstration, and this might take a lot longer than my other demonstrations, but that's alright. I'll be talking through the points and kind of how I'm approaching this. There's argument for not boss rushing on Eater, but I still do it because I believe it's better to get Divine Orb Altars on packs as opposed to the boss, unless you're at the end. But yeah, I would highly recommend still boss rushing. Also, flashbang warning. This build is a little bit hard on the eyes, so if you need to look away, it's fine. There's not much going on. All right. So how I usually approach these maps is I kind of just clear backwards, right, as usual. The one option is to just wait for quant altars before you pop any of the mechanics, and that's kind of what I've been doing. I'll do Syndicate right away, just because Syndicate's kind of unaffected by those. But you can still wait on doing some Syndicates, and if you need to do a specific type.
If you think I'm going
a Syndicate or a specific encounter first, then that's fine.
We should have cut you loose. The Syndicate is not just a cluster of like.
Might actually be able to get him in research. So you notice there's a lot of Harbingers. Boss Harbingers are pretty nice. They drop a lot more currency shards, obviously. We have the node that makes it so currency shards may turn into actual full orbs, and hence why we sometimes get chaos orbs, because it's usually shards that drop. These chayulas are pretty dangerous for me because I don't have any chaos res and I'm running at Xeris to compensate for that. But they're also just pretty nasty if they shotgun me with their projectiles. It's not very fun. I don't like it. I also have trouble clicking these hands without taking absurd amounts of damage because, my build is just great. It's amazing. But yeah, I think if you have a build that can easily go through and just click all of these without any risk, you could get probably a couple more than me on average, which is obviously going to get you more breachstones. And you can already see, the time for these maps is already counting up a decent bit. So one thing to note is you're going to be in here for literally an eternity if you don't have a relatively strict loot filter. I'm running a variant of uber strict from Filter Blade that also hides a lot of other unwanted things contracts, some contracts, and then in general a lot of fractured bases that aren't T1 and whatnot. You don't want anything showing up that you're not going to actually look at or pick up. And obviously that's with any farming strategy, but with this one as well, specifically, it's pretty rough to be in here for a crazy amount of time. On average, I'd say these maps for me take anywhere from 6:40, so 6 minutes 40 seconds to
impressive strength. Be careful. Would you like to know?
Somehow,
8
trusting
minutes,
this Riker
maybe. 8 minutes is like very much if I die or if I like am taking my time with Syndicate, which usually doesn't happen anyways, but you know, these can be longer maps. It could be part of the appeal because you don't have to roll as many maps. You don't have to like buy as many sextants and all that. Downside obviously is you have to deal with
I don't know. A little more. Go on.
you have to deal with kind
Violence.
of being in a map for just an insane amount of time.
Death is
I would say.
Absolutely.
Just not so ideal.
Kind of.
This is a good example. This is a pretty insane board. Hillock at rank 3 is going to be 100, or sorry, 1 div for his flask quality. Riichi is going to be 50C a white socket. Tor is going to be 50C per table, so 100C total for her gem XP. And Ashling is going to be 3 to 4 div, depending on like the time of day. So that's what, like, at least 4 div plus, let's say, 50C. It's usually 2 sockets, so almost, you know, 5 divines from Syndicate. And when you're taking all the nodes that give you like sort of mastermind progress, it's gonna be a lot better to spawn it. It's not gonna feel like it's gonna take an eternity. Just want to be really careful with like breaking your house and like having people not show up when you need them to. That's probably not a big issue if you know how to play Syndicate. I'm still learning it again, so it's like there's a learning curve to it. You may just want to opt out of Syndicate entirely if you don't know how to use it, but I would also recommend like maybe play around with it. It's a good chance to learn because you're still going to make profit even if you screw up your board like in its entirety. I guarantee you will still make profit. There's almost no way you're not making currency from this unless you're just not like killing anything. And go around, touch all the breaches, and then it just becomes Legion Dunes after this, and you know that's fine. So when Chayula spawns, it's kind of exciting, right? No, they don't drop anything except for like 5 to 6 splinters, which I mean it's a tenth of a breachstone. It's around 60. It's nothing crazy, but it does add up. It does add up. So I am gonna probably stop this right here. Again, you can kind of see I'm going around the breach, kind of having to click everything all at once, which isn't as ideal. If you have a tornado shot, you can go one side of the breach, kill stuff there, and then just shoot the other direction, and you'll be pretty golden. And that's gonna probably be a lot more convenient for you compared to how I'm dealing with it right now. My build's a lot better with legions, but yeah, the faster you can clear these, obviously, the more currency you're gonna make, because you can just farm through these maps faster. And again, setting up a good Syndicate is just gonna take that to the next level. Fractured bases, please, please, please pick them up. You get tier 1 suppress, it's a lot of money. You get even like +1 all spell, it's a lot of currency. Just do it. Pick them up, ID them, if they're good bases, obviously, and just go from there, you know. But yeah, hope this strategy was helpful. Hope I gave you something you can kind of take and make your own, make yourself a little bit more interested in the game or like in a different farming strategy, make it more interesting. And yeah, that's kind of the entire point of these videos, just to provide like people with ways to like approach currency making. Because sometimes you get stuck in like one way and you're like thinking, hey, like what else can I do to make currency? Like why should I change this if it's like making me good currency already? Well, maybe you want to try something new. Like again, I'm fully for trying out Syndicate. Betrayal, I should say. If you haven't learned it before, that's why I'm doing it. I'm trying to learn how to really be efficient in getting people into research and getting like the right members where they want to be. And the only way to really do that, like watching videos is good and all, but you just gotta do it yourself so you can perform consistently. But yeah. Till next time. Ciao.